Qxir. In Irish folklore, fairies are believed to be the descendants of one of the first tribes to arrive in Ireland. They're a race of beings with magical powers, but when they were defeated in battle against other tribes, they were forced to live in secrecy. Traditionally, Irish people believe the fairies live in secluded spots in nature, making their dwellings in hawthorn trees or circular embankments known as fairy forts. According to this tradition, you must never interfere with these dwellings, lest you incur the wrath of the fairies, who will use their magic to put a curse on you. Nowadays, of course, the vast majority of us have institutional education and access to the entirety of human knowledge at our fingertips, and we don't rely on storytelling quite so much for information. We now know those strange circular embankments are the remains of prehistoric ring forts from the Iron Age, and not forts created by magical beings. As such, there are few people who still believe in the existence of fairies, as you can imagine. But not too long ago, there were quite a number of people who weren't taking any chances when it came to the fairies. Take this fella, interviewed in 1983, who is convinced that the lone tree on his land belongs to fairies, and when it falls, he will die, so he's taken to building supports for the thing.
Well, it's a fairy tree. There's an old tradition, do you see, that there was mass said under it. The time it was in the Penal Times. And I wanted to keep it up and that, but I had another bigger reason for keeping it up. And there was 6 families of Sweeneys in this place. And there's an old tradition that when the bush would fall, the last of them a day. Well, I happen to be the last member now of the family, and I could be 14 or 20, and if the bush fell, I'd be dead in a week, and because I took no chances. And so I'm propping it up, and every storm that comes, I do go out and taking the wires, and I'm afraid of my life.
Now, as an Irish person, I'll do my best to put subtitles for those of you who might be hard-pressed to understand the accent, but fuck me if I'm not hard-pressed to understand some of this myself.
And I just want to get another few years out of the bush, and it's beginning to get Chuck as well as myself, you see. And Donagh Dolan was telling me, and he freckened me more, he was down in Kerry, and this old man came in and he says, "Are you Mr. Donagh Dolan?" And indeed I am, Mrs. And tell me that Sweeney man up in Longford, did that bush fall till he die? Oh God, he says, he'll be dead now. Well, God help the poor man, he says, how does he sleep for a while night? Wouldn't he be better dead nor suffering agony, expecting every morning to go and he had only a week to live? Says he has it well propped. It doesn't matter what he has done, or if the spell is on it, it'll fall. And my God, that's the end of him.
It might just be me, but I think he looks a bit like Eustace from Courage the Cowardly Dog. The interviewer then suggests that Mr. Sweeney could avoid the curse by making sure he is no longer the last of his family.
There is a way that you could solve that problem, and that is if you decided to take unto yourself a wife and procreate it, as you might say.
Sure, the only thing you can do so is still do it.
Well, are you going to?
Well, I don't know, but sure, I says, Oliver Goldsmith, I still have hopes my latest hours to crown amid the marriage bliss I'd lie down, maybe, I don't know. But sure, you could never know what happened. Sure, the fairies might work something for me. Well, God, sure, they could keep me young. They could keep you young. Sure,
what age are you now?
Oh, no, I'm not answering you that one because I'm still on the lookout. I'm a bachelor.
Mr. Sweeney also possesses a personal pet peeve of mine that's fairly common to Irish people, particularly up here in Dublin, and that's adding syllables to words, although I will admit it's a lot more charming in his accent.
I cut off the heavy bits to keep it not to be over top heavy, because I want to preserve it as long as I can. I don't want to prepare to go no any of these days anyway. I don't want to go even if the weather is bad itself.
And what's the worst kind of weather, Jim, now?
A storm.
A storm?
Oh, a storm to blow it down.
An old storm could blow down that tree, by God, and poor Sweeney'd be in the ground not a week later, God help him.
Come on and we'll have a look at the tree.
Right.
I must say, no, it looks solid enough. Like, I don't think that'll come down too easily.
What, don't knock it down on top of me height.
What?
once she had knocked the whole thing down.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, God should run. I couldn't not shake it.
Did you feel
I don't want it to fall for long.
Did you feel a slight tremor?
Oh yeah, so you believe you'll die if this tree falls over, do you? Oh, fucking prick. Overall, I quite enjoyed that. He seemed like a nice old fella. He believes in fairies, but sure, look, there's no harm in that. But if that clip wasn't quite as strange or quirky as you were hoping, well, worry not, because this next one is something else. In this clip from 1966, a worker from Cork's dockyard, Tim Hayes, wishes to be buried alive in a fairy fort.
Tim, why do you want to go down in a fairy fort?
I just want to prove to the whole world that there's no such a thing as a fairy.
You're a man who obviously doesn't believe in fairies.
I don't believe in fairies. Although I've been warned by several people not to go down, even to go near the fairy fort. In fact, I had a letter from a widow from Douglas in Cork last night, and she said she saw a fairy 30 years ago, and she hadn't an hour's luck since. I think that's only all pishog.
You're not going to take any notice of it?
No, I'm
anyway.
not going to take any notices of it.
But you see, there are a lot of people like that widow woman you were talking about who do honestly believe in this, isn't that so?
Oh, definitely. In fact, my mother believed in it, and my uncles, and all down outside Middleton there's a few fairy forts, and they wouldn't even go up around it.
Unfortunately for Tim, in the town where he desires to be buried, none of the local people will help him dig the grave. As I mentioned, it's bad luck to interfere with the fairies' land, and so Tim, and whoever else helps him, can probably expect a curse.
I'm a poor man, and I want money the worst way. And I'll tell you the truth, if you give me £1,000 tomorrow morning, I wouldn't dig a spit with a spade in it.
Well, what about the fairy field now, where they've changed it to?
The fairy field and the Raheen is all the same to me. I wouldn't meddle with it. And God between us and all harm, I don't want to see anyone around here meddling with it. With that enchanted place.
Peter Bryan isn't alone in his fear of the power of the wee people.
I have to say, I'm quite a fan of this fella. I love this characterization of himself. He's a poor man who wants money in the worst way. What sort of desperate and dastardly man is this? But even he won't go near that feckin' fairy fort. I can only assume he's had a prior bad experience where the fairies cursed him to emote like a Jim Henson puppet for all eternity. Thankfully, Tim is able to get help from out of town, and he's soon buried in a coffin with a few supplies and a phone line to the surface to keep him occupied. The whole thing seems to be an effort to break some sort of record, but I don't have full context for the clip, so I couldn't be sure on exactly what he's trying to achieve, but regardless, it seems like he's intent on staying in that coffin for quite a while.
Well, he went down on Christmas Day, soon after he had had his turkey and plum pudding dinner. There were many in Ballymore to see him buried. For them it was a Christmas diversion, and they didn't expect him to last longer than a few hours. But he stayed down, linked by a phone and alarm system in a coffin that allowed him space to manoeuvre. He read, by torch, a couple of books like The Beautiful Coffin and Dracula, and enjoyed himself.
Tim, are you happy down there? Tell me, what does it feel to be down there with people talking to you from the surface?
Oh, lovely. I'm that happy now. If they put a corpse in alongside me, it wouldn't worry me.
Any feeling of loneliness?
No, not a bit in the world.
What about claustrophobia, Tim? Does this worry you?
No, never did.
Tim, one of the things you told Newsbeat earlier was that you were looking forward to the sound of the earth and the stones hitting the coffin as they buried you. Did you find that this was quite as pleasant as you expected?
Oh yes, I was looking forward to it. It was lovely to hear it thumping off at the lid.
Tim's a bit peculiar, isn't he? It seems like there's some sort of deep psychological thing going on here in his fascination with being buried. I honestly think the people who are afraid of disturbing the fairies are less strange than Tim.
By the time the existing record of 100 hours had been equalled, there were thousands in Ballymore to applaud the achievement.
Qxir has now been 101 hours under 6 foot of earth.
I thought that chap was only a child until the camera zoomed out, and now I don't know what to think. Well, what does Tim's mother think?
Well, it's been a terrible ordeal, and I have died 100 deaths since Timothy went down. But still, I'm very happy with the committee he's got, because they've looked after him wonderful. And I think they're marvellous, and there's great credit due to him.
Did you ever try and put Tim off going down this grave?
Well, first I did. I thought, it was a bit of a wild idea. But then when I knew he was so secure, and every precaution was taken for his good and benefit, I was very happy about it.
And how do you feel about him tonight? Are you proud of him?
Oh, I'm very proud of him. Very proud of him. I think he's marvellous. Really marvellous. And all I'm longing now is to see him.
Well, that took a fucking turn. I have died 100 deaths since my only begotten son clambered into that coffin. Stricken with fear, I have suffered in the shadow of grief, fearing that some mishap may claim his life, or his folly may have caused offence to the mystical beings of the other world, who in anger may put upon him a hex for the rest of his days on this mortal coil. But yes, the whole event's been fantastic, and really I couldn't complain. With the record broken, all that's left is to get Tim out of there, although I'm sure he wouldn't mind if you just left him.
That was about 90 degrees. Did you ever feel that you'd have to give up the attempt?
No, I knew what the boys and top would settle that.
What about the feeling of claustrophobia, Tim? Did this worry you?
No, not a bit. It never did.
Well, no, what were you thinking about most down there, Tim?
Oh, when I was away at sea and back in my school days, and about friends that was dead.
Friends that were dead. What were you thinking? Oh, this must have been what they were up to the last few years.
Now, you said before going down that you were doing this in the interest of research and science.
Yes.
Was any test in fact carried out on you while you were down there?
No.
Well, no, has it all been worth it from your point of view?
Oh, it was, yes.
Would you do it again?
I would, yes. I'd go down again for another 100 hours if they left me.
Well, no, already there are other people talking of breaking the record.
Well,
how do you feel about this?
They can have a go and I'll try again.
Right, break, lads.
You're quite confident about it, are you?
And there the clip ends. It sounds like a fight or something was breaking out above ground. It's a shame I don't have any follow-up on old Tim. How was his life after disturbing the fairy fort? Maybe he dropped dead not long after this event, but sure, it obviously wouldn't have bothered him. And that concludes our look at fairies and the people who believe and don't believe in them. If Irish folklore is something that interests you, there are still a few select people who still believe in fairies and can show you around these sites and tell you stories, particularly in the more rural west of Ireland. So if you're ever planning on coming over for a visit, a quick Google search could probably direct you to these places if you're so inclined. And if you won't be over anytime soon, but you still want to find out a little bit more, there's plenty of content on YouTube of people showing off these places and talking about them. And if you want to see the original clips I used in this video in their entirety without some fat gobshite talking over them, I'll put the links in the description. That's all for now, but do join me next time as I take a look at more strange and bizarre occurrences that were broadcast on Irish TV. Cheers.